Hey Lois, good morning. All right, we are on day 3 of our sew along. So day 3 of Crossroads sew along, and this is the guy. I hope you guys got your blocks done this week. If you haven't and you're still working on it, that's great. We're going to share tips on going forward. I'm going to be talking about how to put your quilt together, some quilting tips, and some border ideas, and I'm going to unveil our quilt that I finished the other day. It's not quilted, but the top is done. First, I want to talk about next week. This is our last week for this, so next week I'm going to spend the week planning and cutting for the following week, and then the following week on Wednesday, the 17th, we're going to start our Dutch Wonderland sew along. Anyway, Dutch Wonderland, this is the pattern. It does look complex. It doesn't need to be. It is very easy and approachable. But what I'm going to do is each week, as I'm going to on Monday post the fabric requirements to make one block, not the number you need for the quilts. And you'll see I'm going to flip through some of these blocks. They're very approachable. They don't require any special rulers or templates. They're very easy to approach. There we go. And that way you can make one of each block and you'll have 8 blocks at the end. You'll learn about half square triangles, working with bias triangles, flying geese, square and a square. There's a log cabin in here. So it's just one block of each to give you some basics. So please join us on June 17th when we do start the Dutch Wonderland. If you are interested in making the whole project, then you're going to want to order the pattern. It is on our website. And I do know we did a kit with Clothworks and with Anthology. And Clothworks and Anthology fabric kits for these are available out on the website. Or not our website, out online on different shops. You just search Dutch Wonderland Heidi Pridemore fabric kit and you'll see the different companies that have the kits available if you want to make one. And if you do, let me know. I'd love to hear it. So now that we've got our blocks sewn together, I want to talk about how I put my quilts together. And this is just a little trick I've learned. I am a speed sewer. I am constantly against the clock trying to get these quilts done for fabric companies. And I have learned over time that I find it goes together quicker if instead of sewing, 4 rows with 3 blocks in each row, I will sew 3 columns with 4 blocks in each row. That way you're only fighting with 3 long strips to match all of these points. I do pin anytime I sew anything over 12 inches. I pin it because your feed dogs on your machine go at 2 different speeds. The feed dogs on the bottom pull at 1 speed, and if you don't have dual feeds on your machines, which most machines don't unless you have a brand new one, the top goes at a different speed. So if you don't pin things, you will get fabric gathered in your seam. You'll notice it mostly if you've ever done a quilt top, didn't pin your border, and it ripples. That's because you got excess fabric in it by not pinning. So you need to pin, and I pin at each point so that I make sure I hit those points and make sure they come out accurate. For all of my perfectionists, cover your ears. For my non-perfectionists or beginners, just know that if you're just a little bit off, there is no reason to rip this out and redo it. Once you quilt the quilt and wash the quilt and it shrinks up, you're never going to notice if you're a little bit off here. I usually tell my students, sew everything together, step back a couple feet, look and see if you can see where the error is. If you can see it, or if it's going to make you crazy, take it out. If you can live with it, everyone else should be able to live with it. So don't worry about being super, super perfect if you're just starting with quilting. So once we sew our rows together, then all you have to do on this one is there's just a little border out here. And I believe the border is 3-inch finish. What I've gone ahead, I'm going to unveil our quilt and show you what I did, because that affects the outer border width. So this is the same quilt but done with Who's Who fabric from Wyndham Fabrics, and it's being held up with magnets. I'm being really careful. I got these so tight magnets and they work wonderful to hold heavy stuff. Alright, so back up it goes. And there is our Who's Who quilts. Our Crossroads quilt using Who's Who. And Who's Who was designed by, I can't pronounce it, but there you go. That's her name. She did a beautiful job. I love these owls. And so these are the ones where we did flip-flopped the fabrics. So 2 and 2, so these two match these two. I sewed them into columns. Now I only had a fat quarter bundle and I didn't have any excess fabric for the borders. So what I did is I just did some very simple math, and I've done it so you can also do a pieced border if you want. If you take the first border, which on here is the only border, and you cut it down to a 2.5 inch wide border versus 3.5 inch wide, you can now put a 4-inch pieced border on. And what I mean by 4 inches, each unit measures 4 inches from top to bottom. The width is divisible by 4 and the length is divisible by 4. All you have to do for that is change this first border to finish at 2 inches, cut at 2.5. And then you can do something out here. So this one you can do, I just did little strips. I cut 1.5 by 4 inch strips, and I did a nice scrappy little border out there. You could do flying geese, which you could cut 2.5 by 4.5. You could do 4-inch blocks if you have enough fabric. You could just sew all kinds of fabrics together, scrappy, and then just cut it to length, in which case you don't need to worry about being divisible by 4. So those are some options for piecing your borders. Any questions on piecing borders? Okay, so we're going to move on to the quilting part. So once you've got the rows put together and you put your borders on, you're ready to quilt the quilt. So let me just flip this back up. Anybody else suffer from being short? There we go. That's why I love this quilt rack, because it just goes up and down as I need it. So for the quilting on this one, we did a medallion design in each block. And the medallion design is curved hearts. It's very soft and curvy. And that's because the blocks are very pointy. So when you go to decide your quilting design, think about what the overall quilt looks like. This is very angular and pointy, so by doing a soft quilting motif, it softens the points. Or you can accentuate the pointiness. Same thing where if you have you think about Drunkard's Path quilts, a lot of times you'll see them quilted very literally, very angled, because they're trying to offset the curve of the piece block. So that is just a way to look at your quilting. Overall, first look at what type of quilting you need, whether you need it to be pointy or soft and curvy. Then look at your blocks. Like in this case, a motif worked great because these are big, chunky blocks. There's a lot of room to showcase. This one was quilted in invisible thread, so the quilting doesn't really pop off. Mainly because when we're doing quilts, they're for fabric companies, and we want to showcase the prints and the fabric that they're trying to sell versus the threads for quilting it. So in this case, this was done in invisible, but you could do a contrasting thread and it would just pop right out. And we went with a very romantic, traditional pattern because the fabrics were romantic and traditional. For the Who's Who quilt, let's see if I can pull this guy back down. He's very whimsical and very happy, and he and very soft. The colors are soft, but if you look at the actual fabrics themselves, you know, they're very busy and big, and we don't want to take away from that. But so like a motif or a medallion on this one, I may not do that because I really just want everything to be even and pop. So on this one, we'll probably just do an all over, hopefully a daisy, or leaves, or something that ties into the fabric design versus the pattern design. So those are some ways to approach your quilting. If you did our Down the Rabbit Hole quilt, you'll know we had other motif ideas on how to do your layout. On this guy, it's just alternating every other one because we have even number of blocks. So there isn't any real difference in ways you can lay this out unless you made more blocks. And if you are inclined to make more blocks, you could do 1 diamond, 2 X's, 1 diamond, 2 X's, so you could mimic or mix them up, make it a little scrappier. But anyway, that is the end of our first sew along. I hope you've enjoyed going along with me and doing this. I have had a great time doing it. I hope you will check in on June 17th. If you watch the group, there'll be more details. Still going back and forth on whether we're going to keep it on Facebook or move it over to Zoom where we could actually interact in a video, which I think would be much more fun. So keep an eye on that. And then we have some other projects coming down the pike for you. Next week we're going to start doing some videos on how to organize, so stay tuned for those, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, make sure you like and subscribe below. You can find the Whimsical Workshop on our website, thewhimsicalworkshop.com. And that has all links to all of our other social media platforms. Thanks for joining us.